Good afternoon, guys. Yo, what's up? I am sorry for the delay here. We're about 5 minutes behind. I had some technical difficulties here. Hopefully, the stream is coming through just fine for you right now. If it's not, please drop that in the chat and we'll try to address that. We're going to go ahead and get this started here. I hope everybody had a great holiday weekend. I know I certainly did. Let's go ahead and jump back in here. First question from James Chan: Kuminga or Reeves will be more stable to have going forward? Should I drop Reeves for Kuminga, 14-team roto? No, I prefer Reeves in this case. Over the last couple of weeks, Kuminga hasn't even cracked the top 200 in per game fantasy value, and that's with Curry being out, that's with Wiggins being out, that's with other injuries across Golden State's roster. I just don't know that Kuminga has enough, enough minutes, enough, with his skill set to put anything together for you, even at a 14-teamer. Meanwhile, Reeves, over the last couple of weeks, is a top 75 guy. He's seeing plenty of run for the Lakers. He's certainly the guy that I would, rather have there. Who would you drop to use as a streamer? Mathurin, Keegan, or DeLon Wright? Need assists, threes, and stocks. I'm not sure what the question's asking. Who would I rather drop or who would I rather stream? So if you're looking for assists, obviously DeLon Wright is going to be your guy. If you're looking for stocks, again, that's going to be Wright. So I would recommend Wright would be the guy to stream. If you're looking for threes, Keegan and Mathurin both provide pretty good threes. So it just boils down to which one of those you prefer more. But just all around is probably going to end up being DeLon Wright for you. Okay. Yeah, Booker will be out for at least a month. That news just dropped shortly before this started. He's going to be out for at least 4 more weeks. Should I drop Reeves for Payne? No, I would still rather have Reeves in this case. Phoenix is going to give some run to guys like Josh Okogie, Landry Shamet once he gets healthy. Damian Lee has played a bigger role. Cam Payne is still going to be a valuable fantasy guy, but his value is closely more tied to Chris Paul rather than Devin Booker, just because he's a point guard rather than a 2 guard. So would rather have Reeves in this case. Drop Eason for Payne. I think at this point you can drop Eason for Payne. I think that's a fine gamble. I really like Eason a lot, but I think his time is coming more for silly season. Yo, hello Zach, my man Hanshew. Hello Mark, my man Therian. I hope I pronounced that right. What's going on, brother? Just one quick question. What do you think of this trade? Me trading Ivy, Trey, and Cam J for Collins, Herter, and Middleton. Excuse me. So you would be trading Ivy, Jones, and Cam for Collins, Herter, and Middleton. Currently sitting second place in my league. I think if you're in second place in your league, I think you can take the gamble on Chris Middleton. I think that's for a guy that's perennially a top 50 player. I think that's he's a guy that you can roll the dice on if you're in the position to do that. If the rest of your roster is pretty good, which it sounds like probably it is. Middleton's been really disappointing when he's been on the court. He's been injured a lot. But yeah, I think that's a swing for the fences type of move, and that's the type of stuff that I typically like to do instead of playing it safe. So I talked about this with Josh Lloyd last week on on his mailbag show, is that there's different fantasy managers have different strategies, right? So some people like to play it safe. If you're in second place, somebody some managers might say, hey, let's keep doing what we're doing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And some people like to take that opportunity to, try to cement themselves even further and swing for the fences and just put themselves way over the top. And making a move like this for Middleton when he's at his lowest, I think that's totally a fine move for you. Adventures of Caleb. Hi. Hello, Adventures of Caleb. How are you? Thoughts on Dwayne Washington with Phoenix tonight? Thanks. Dwayne Washington, I think he's a gamble in deeper leagues. I think you can take a shot on him. I think maybe we're getting some bots in here from Soccer Games. Hi, hello. Okay. We know the obvious players who gain off the Booker injury, but with how injured the rotation is top, with how injured the rotation is top to bottom, how much gain do each of Wainwright, Sarge, and Craig get with Washington and Lee needed at guard? I think you can kind of look at the production that these guys have had over the last Booker's missed 6 of the last 9 games, and the one game that he came back, he played for 4 minutes, right? So how much do Wainwright, Sarge, and Craig get with Washington and Lee needed at guard? I don't think these guys get huge value, to be honest with you. I think Sarge is a guy that I would like to see get some more run, but with Cam being out, obviously it's been more of Torrey Craig, and as long as DeAndre Ayton's healthy, we're not going to see too much of Sarge here. I think Craig, to me, is the biggest beneficiary of any, obviously, of the Cam Johnson injury, but now with Booker out, I think Craig is the guy that gets the biggest boost, and he's a guy that should have been on your radar to begin with. I'm not putting much stock in Wainwright or Sarge unless you're playing in a deeper league. The returns from these guys have been pretty low, even when given some extra chances. But Torrey Craig is absolutely a guy that should be on your radar. And Okaji needed for depth at the 3. Exactly. I put out a tweet about this when the Booker news dropped. I think Damian Lee probably has the safest floor, in my opinion, just based on minutes, just based on what he can do. I think Okaji is better if you're looking for defensive stats, but his minutes have been kind of all over the place. I think he's topped out at like 28 minutes or something, over the last couple of weeks. And maybe, not remembering that right, but I know he's had a couple of games where the minutes have been, 10 to 15, which has been pretty disappointing. So Okaji there, and then Landry Shamet has been really he's been really cooking with threes. He had 9 one game, he had 7 one game. He's been scoring a lot. So if I had to rank them again, it would be Damian Lee would be my top one. Landry Shamet next, even though Shamet is injured at this point. He's expected back sometime soon. And then Okaji would be last just because of the uncertainty with the minutes. But I do like Okaji for the defensive stats for sure. All right, moving on here. Thoughts on Sohan with the Spurs? Thanks, Zach. Appreciate your help. Not a problem. Jeremy Sohan, he has been playing much better recently, right? So ranked inside the top 120 over the last week. Just pulling up his numbers here. 14.5 points, 8 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1.6 combined blocks and steals, field goal percentage, not excellent. Free throw percentage, not horrible for a big. I think he's a guy that if he's still available on your waiver wire, absolutely go ahead and give him an ad. I think there's big potential for him down the stretch, especially if the Spurs, continue into tank mode. I think we're just starting to see him really start to develop. And he's doing the things that we expected from him, right? Coming out of college, we expected a 3-and-D type of guy. Obviously, with the hair, we were kind of drawing some comparisons to a Dennis Rodman type. And we've seen him make an impact. There's a lot of things he does on the court that don't necessarily translate to fantasy hoops. But just his decision-making, as I mentioned, the 4.3 assists, we've started to see him develop more as a facilitator. And if he can continue moving in that direction, where he's getting you assists, where he's getting close to 10 rebounds, where he's scoring, and his scoring maybe goes up a little bit in terms of efficiency, which I think it will. Obviously, he's a rookie and shooting 44%. I think he can certainly improve on that. So all of that to say, yes, I like Sohan. I think he's worth an ad right now in 12-team leagues, absolutely, if he's still available. I just picked up Seth Curry in a 16-team points league. He's been in a slump lately. Do you think he can pick it up and outplay Joe Harris for the starting position eventually? Yeah, I think he can outplay Joe Harris. I'm curious to see what this roster looks like when him, Harris, and TJ Warren are all available together for an extended period. Obviously, TJ Warren has been pretty good over the last week, but I'm curious just to see kind of how the Nets utilize all three of them when all together in a period of time. Okay. Moving on. Desperately looking to trade AG for a center in my 16-team head-to-head. Any ideas? Yeah, Aaron Gordon has been really good. I'm not sure why you would want to trade him, just unless you're really in need of center help. And again, that kind of depends on how people in your league value Gordon. He's been a top 75 guy for most of the season. He's given some mid-round value at points. And he's having the most efficient season he's ever had, right? He's shooting better than 60%, 17-7, which is kind of what we saw him do when he was with the Magic in his prime. 2.1 assists, 1-3 per game, nearly a steal and a block per game. So that's really solid production. I kind of feel like he's a bit undervalued. I don't think people are necessarily appreciative of exactly what he's been doing right now. But if you're looking for some big man stats, yeah, I think a guy maybe in that range that you could try. I think the problem with Gordon is you would have to package him with somebody else. But I think if you're looking to get a center that's maybe in that range, I would maybe try Yusuf Nurkic. I might even be honest with you. I might even try Robert Williams, just because he's only getting 18, 19, 20 minutes a game at this point while he's coming back. And if you can afford to get a center that has a ton of potential right now, I think Williams might be a guy that you could buy low. I think Jakob Poeltl is another guy that just coming off injury. He's been a little bit slow ramping back up. I think Poeltl is a guy that you might be able to get as well. Wendell Carter Jr. In that same kind of sphere. I think if you're worried about his injury risk or just Orlando's front court rotation, but I think Nurkic and Time Lord are two guys that I would probably start at first. I have Olynyk to remove from IL. Who do I drop? Kessler, TJ Warren, or Grimes? 10-team head-to-head, 9 categories. I think Grimes would be the drop right here. I'm not too enthused about TJ Warren. I know he's had a top 50 week, but as I mentioned, I think Curry and Harris, once they get back to being fully healthy, and we see kind of what the Nets utilize in that rotation, I'm not entirely sold on TJ Warren at this point. But I think Quentin Grimes in a 10-team league, he's droppable. Especially if you got Olynyk coming back. Who's a pickup with Booker injured, as I mentioned before. Obviously I like Campaign. He's more highly rostered than a lot of these guys, and he's been injured for the better part of 2 weeks. But of the other guys, I certainly like Damian Lee is my top choice, then Shamet, and then Okaji would be third. And then we addressed it earlier. I think Torrey Craig is somebody that should have been on your radar to begin with. Excuse me. Another Kelly O question. Who do I drop? With Kelly O coming back, Killian Hayes or Keldon Johnson, or do I keep hold with my current roster, which I guess would mean dropping Kelly or just leaving him on IL and not using him? Yeah, that's a tough one just because Killian Hayes certainly has that job locked up, and he's been playing really well recently. Keldon Johnson on the season ranks outside the top 200. I don't necessarily know if it's time to drop Keldon yet, but I think we're really getting close to that point. I don't know, guys. Is this the point? Are we going to work through some issues here on our own? I mean, in this chat right now, are we going to talk this through together? Is Keldon Johnson a drop right now? If we're looking at his stats, on the season, what is he necessarily doing for us, right? He's given us points. He's been giving us threes. What else has he been doing for us? I'm really curious what everybody thinks in this chat right now. Is Keldon Johnson a drop for you? He's averaging 21 points a game, 2.5 threes, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. Those are all great numbers. He's dragging you way down with the field goal percentage just because he shoots so much and doesn't make very many shots, right? Free throw percentage isn't great. The defensive numbers are not great. And turnovers are not great, right? Again, though, if you're punting categories, let's just go ahead and check this out here. So if I punt, let's say we're punting field goal percentage with which, probably a lot of you did build with punt field goal percentage in mind. And we can take a look at Keldon. He's still ranked right outside the top 120. So it's been a rough go for Keldon Johnson right now. I would still suggest trying to trade Keldon before dropping him. But if I had to choose between him and Hayes, I'm probably dropping Keldon. I think maybe this is a come to Jesus moment for me, and we're dropping Keldon here live on the chat. Rest of the team, CP3, Kyrie, Uncle Bogey, Ben Simmons, Duran, Pirtle, Gobert, Harden, Vassell, SGA, and Barnes. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the same guy we were just talking about here. Yeah, I think all those guys you can keep, and I think Vassell will be the drop. Dwayne Washington or Payne. Now CP3 may be hurt and Booker is out. Thanks, Zach. Yeah, it's going to be Payne for me. Again, I think Dwayne Washington's fine to maybe try in a deeper league. I'm not grabbing him in 12-team leagues. Drop Bowl, what does his rest of season look like? I still think he's great for blocks. He still gives you a 3 per game. He's not thrilling. The returns have been pretty minimal recently, but I still think he's a hold for right now. I wouldn't necessarily drop him at this point unless there's somebody much better on your waiver wire. Drop one in a 16-team points league. Curry, Poku, Naughty Nicky, or Oladipo. In a points league, I think I'm probably at this point – I'll probably drop Nick. Dynasty 10 Cat. Would you drop Pat Bev, Conchar, or the recently sent down Roddy to free up a spot for Jock? I would drop Pat Bev. I recently traded him away for Trill Barton in a Dynasty league that I'm in. Shout out to Vince, commissioner of our league, for making that trade. Yeah, just to free up some space and maybe get a guy that's a little more useful. Pat Bev doesn't do much. He's old. He talks more than he does anything, to be honest with you. So I would keep Magic Conchar. I would keep Rowdy Roddy. I would drop Pat Bev. Go ahead and grab Jock. Drop Okongwu and Mo. Pick up Nance, Jalen Williams, Lee Hayes, Nasty Reed, Pat Williams, DiVincenzo. You can drop. I think Mo is a fine drop. I would hang on to Okongwu for right now. You could drop Mo, and I think Nance is a good ad as usual. I think Lee is a fine ad. Those would be my top. Nance would be my top ad out of that. So it would be Mo for Nance. Damian Lee would be next out of that. Or, excuse me, Killian Hayes would be next if that's who we're talking about. I'm not sure if that's Jackson Hayes or not. But if it's Killian, he would be next, and then Damian Lee. Which Warriors player should be picked up before trade deadline and hope Green will be traded or any other player getting traded? Which Golden State Warrior player should be picked up? It's Dante DiVincenzo. I'm not super thrilled about any of the other options that they have. We talked about it earlier in the chat. Kuminga just hasn't done a whole lot with his extra opportunity, so not super thrilled with him. Thoughts on Mo and Wendell's playing time moving forward? I think Carter ends up, taking on a bigger chunk of minutes, and that disparity between their playing time shifts much more in favor of WCJ. So I think Wagner is, if you need to drop him, that's fine. If you need to hold him if you have the space to hold him for a little bit, hold him in case, Wendell Carter gets re-injured or the playing time doesn't shake out as we think it might. Would you be more comfortable dropping Melton, Killian, or Bryant in a 10 team when returning IL guys come back? Out of this group, um, I love Killian Hayes, but he would be the drop for me. Melton, I think, is even with Maxey slated to come back this week, right? I think Melton he's just been phenomenal on defense. I think the Sixers are going to find ways to keep him in the rotation. So I think he sees substantial playing time, and he maintains even his floor is going to be top 100. But we've seen, first, second, third round, or not first, but we've seen third round value out of him, at points during the season. We've seen mid-round value from him quite a bit just because of his threes, his defense, scoring, rebounding, assists. He can do just a bit of everything for you. So Hayes for me. And with AD out for a substantial amount of time, I think Tommy B is somebody that's has a pretty high ceiling. How worried should we be of RJ falling back to the mediocre he was at the start of the season after sitting out a week or two with his finger injury? I'd be pretty concerned for sure. Better dynasty guy going forward, Nembhard, Grimes, or Reeves. I actually like them in that order, Nembhard, Grimes, and Reeves. Who wins this trade now? Booker out minimum of 4 weeks. Booker for Tobias Harris. If this is, I'm assuming this is redraft, right? So I don't know. That's a tough one to evaluate. I think if you need to win now, obviously the Tobias side totally crushed it. If you can hold off and wait the month, then I think the Booker side won. But that's very interesting that we're at this point where Booker for Tobias Harris just because of the injury. Okaji or Bogdanovich with the Pistons for the pickup. Thanks. Yeah, it'd be Bogdanovich for sure. Not even close. Teresa Maxey rest of season. I'm not sure if that's Tyrese's sister that got the call up from the G League, and she's going to be jumping into the Sixers lineup. I'm assuming we're talking Tyrese here. He's playing on Friday again. Rest of season. I think we can expect maybe a little bit of a ramp-up period for him for the first week that he's back, and I think we can expect what we got from him earlier in the season. He was playing really well. Who wins in an ESPN points league? Franz and Giddey or McCollum? Yeah, so I mean, and these are their points per game in parentheses here, I assume, for your format. Yeah, I still think the winner here is McCollum. Obviously, I know he's only 6 points higher than Giddey or Franz. I think McCollum has had some really big games. I think he's the best player out of this group by far. And when we do a 2-for-1, obviously, remember you have a free space to stream, which can yield some pretty big results as well. It kind of gives you the freedom to pick up a guy that's balling out for a week due to injury or extra minutes. And then you can kind of swap interchangeably week to week. So I still think McCollum is the winner in that side, but it's not an unfair trade. It's a good trade. Have a great New Year. See you in 2023. Yes, sir. We'll be back next week. Have a great New Year. Absolutely. Would Wiseman be the best gamble in the Green scenario and just hope the talent wins out down the stretch? James Wiseman has the highest upside of any big man in Golden State by a country mile. It's just the reluctance of Steve Kerr to give him any sort of significant playing time. The man has shown that he can rebound, he can score, he can even shoot a damn three every now and then. So absolutely Wiseman is the best gamble. Just remember when you gamble, sometimes you lose and you lose hard. Sometimes you blow the company payroll in Vegas, and that's the end of it. Drop Mathurin for Damian Lee. Yeah, I think that's fine. I know that might sound a bit crazy just because of Mathurin's role as a big-time scorer off of Indiana's bench, but I've talked about this before. I love Mathurin as a player. I love him in a points league, in a categories league. I'm not necessarily, somebody that's going to be holding on to him. Would I trade Poole and Kevin Porter or Brunson for Jimmy Buckets? No, I wouldn't. I love Jimmy Butler. This goes back to, I just mentioned before, sometimes I love getting the best player in a deal and having that streaming spot in a 2-for-1. But Poole is magnificent when Curry sits. Brunson has been phenomenal this year, and KPJ has really picked it up here over the last couple of weeks. So no, I'd rather have the current roster that you have. I think that gives you flexibility, and I think you have 3 really solid players there. Will the Joker be back-to-back-to-back MVP? If he keeps up with this pace, absolutely. But I think a certain 60-21 guy from last night might have something to say about that. Would you trade PG and Levine for Kyrie and Kawhi? Yeah, I would. Just for, I would trade PG and Levine for Kyrie. So, yeah, throwing Kawhi on top of that just as the kicker, sure. Is Butler a buy low, or would you rather stay clear? No, I think if you can buy him low, absolutely, you go ahead and make that move. We know he can be a first-rounder, and he was a first-rounder at some points during the season. Trade Turner for Pirtle. I'd rather have Turner. When do you start looking to make trades for better playoff schedules? I think you can start looking at that now, right? So playoff schedules, not necessarily the matchups. I think you can look at the matchups, but, for fantasy hoops, they're not as easy to kind of predict as a fantasy football matchup, right? Teams facing – and even in football, it's kind of tough, right? So, you would look at last week, for example, the Eagles and Cowboys. You would say, man, the Cowboys' top-ranked defense versus backup quarterback Gardner Minshew. We're going to downgrade the Eagles' receivers. We're going to downgrade Philadelphia's offense. And it went into a shootout, right? So it's not always easy to predict these matchups based on points allowed or certain categorical production allowed to opponents. But when we're talking about playoff schedules, obviously you're referring to how many games a certain guy is playing during a certain week. And you can absolutely take a look at schedules ahead of time and see, man, this team has 2 or 3 games this week compared to 4 or 5 games. And that can ultimately, kind of decide for you if you have 2 guys that are ranked very, very close together. Now, obviously, you're not trading a first rounder for, a 6th or 7th rounder based on that type of schedule. But if 2 guys are within, maybe a round or 2 of each other, and you're getting 2 or 3 extra games, then absolutely that's something that you should be up on right now. Never too early for that. Is Murphy a drop or hold once Ingram is back? I still think he's a hold. I think he was maintaining standalone value earlier in the season, even when the entire team was healthy. So hold on to him. Obviously, if things change, if his production's, craters, falls off a cliff, drop him. Once Ingram comes back and we see that his minutes are just falling into the toilet. But otherwise, when a guy comes back from a lengthy injury, you always want to keep his backup or the guy that you were streaming for at least a game or 2 or maybe even more, like we talked about with Mo Wagner. Keep those guys around because there is a risk of re-injury. We saw Devin Booker come back on Christmas, and if you drop Shaman, if you drop Damian Lee, now you're scrambling to pick those guys back up because Book played 4 minutes and got re-injured, right? So, and now he's out for a month. So hold on to those guys. Give it some time. You don't always know how well a guy will respond after returning from injury. It's the same thing that's going to happen when Anthony Davis eventually comes back. Hang on to Thomas Bryant. It's not going to be an automatic – Anthony Davis is back and Thomas Bryant is getting 2 minutes off the bench type of situation. Zach LaVine or Ingram, who would I rather have? I'd rather have Ingram. Zach LaVine has been pretty disappointing this season. What's wrong with Jalen Smith? He's been relegated to the bench, essentially. They're giving Aaron Nesmith more minutes and more starts. Jalen Smith, unfortunately, is a guy that I thought would have pretty pretty high floor as a top 90-ish type of guy this season as the starter. But obviously, it just hasn't happened with Indiana. As far as Indiana is putting him on the bench and not playing him a whole lot, I can't say for certain. Yeah, unfortunately, things are just not coming together for him this season. Who's the better long-term pickup, TJ Warren or Grimes? I'm still skeptical of TJ Warren. I know he's had this big week, but obviously Brooklyn's been dealing with injuries. I'm not entirely sure what TJ Warren's value is going to be in this rotation. It's Kevin Durant, it's Kyrie Irving, and then it's rotation of guys on the wing. So I'm inclined here to say Quentin Grimes. For me, it's Quentin Grimes. I think he's starting to get into that realm of, being in the Knicks rotation, just seeing huge minutes every night. And that's a guy that I would rather have than TJ Warren, even though TJ Warren's, upside that we all are really hoping to capture from the bubble TJ Warren. How much stock do we put into those kind of performances? I think people put a lot of stock into it because it's fun. Bubble Warren. But we got to remember this is not 2020. This is not the Orlando Disney bubble anymore. This is real basketball, and this is a really good Brooklyn team that has two superstars on it. Mathurin or Sohan in a 10-team cat league? Give me Sohan. $16-team head-to-head. Worried that the Spurs are going to trade Pirtle at the deadline to be a backup. Who should I target in a trade or just hit waivers if it goes bad for him? I think you just hit waivers. I don't think people are going to give you fair value for Pirtle right now just because of the same concerns that you're mentioning. And Pirtle is a guy that's locked into a top, he's locked into a top 80 season with the potential to give you top 50 or 60 performances. So, yeah, I don't think you want to trade him right now. I'm so happy I drafted Halliburton. So am I. You think he's a potential lockdown candidate? No, I don't. I assume you mean shutdown candidate. And no, I don't think he's a potential shutdown candidate just because the Pacers are, I believe they're at 500 or a game below right now. Excuse me. They've been very competitive this season. And I think the Pacers are going to do what they can to continue to let Halliburton develop this season. This is his first full season with the team. Obviously, he has the full support of the coaching staff, management. General manager obviously loves him. They talked him up in the offseason as being a Reggie Miller-type franchise player. He wanted to get to 20-10, which he's doing right now. I think they let him develop and gel with these other guys that we've talked about already, Nembhard, Nesmith, Miles Turner, if he's still on the roster, which obviously he's continued to be on the roster despite these trade talks. I don't see him as being a shutdown candidate. Would you trade away Sabonis for LeBron in a 9-cat league? No, I'd hang on to Sabonis over LeBron. Grimes is way better long-term than TJ Warren. That's the way I feel about it too. I prefer Grimes. Dwayne Washington or Damian Lee tonight? I'll go with Lee. Need to drop Avdia or Sohan to get Zion out of IR. Who should I drop? I'll drop Denny. Another point league question. Who wins this trade in ESPN Points League? Jimmy Buckets or plus Hero for Trey and KPJ. That's an interesting one. I think in this case, I will go with Butler and Hero. Obviously, Trey is phenomenal, but Tyler Hero has really been a huge scorer this season, and him and Butler together, I think that's a fantastic duo right there. So that's the side that I prefer. DeLon Wright, rest of season in a points league. Will he take the starting point guard spot from Monty? He might. We've predicted that Monty will lose that starting point guard job all season and haven't seen it happen yet. I prefer DeLon in a categories league rather than a points league. Hey, I picked Miles Bridges up. Outlook, maybe he plays in March. I wouldn't touch Bridges with a 10-foot pole. I really am not sure what Charlotte's thinking by entertaining the idea of signing him. I think at minimum, Adam Silver will intervene and suspend him. The Players Association might do that before Silver gets to him. He's not a guy that you don't want a guy in that severe of legal trouble on your team. Even if you can live with the kind of moral justification of rostering and rooting for a guy that's done what he's done. Even if you go past those things, you don't want a guy with that kind of uncertainty around him on your fantasy team. Is Beal a hold or should I trade him? He's not a must-hold guy. There's only a few of those, like Luka or Jokic. Everybody pretty much has a price. So if you can get a good haul for Bradley Beal, absolutely do it. But just don't trade him for peanuts. I think with these questions all the time is should I trade a guy high? Yeah, you should trade a guy high. Anytime you can trade a guy at his maximum value, absolutely you do it. And anytime you can buy low on a guy when he's at his lowest, you do it. But you don't do these things just to, hey, I'm trading for a guy. Hey, I'm selling a guy after a bad performance. And you certainly don't trade a guy when he's trending down because then you're losing out on value right there. But for me, nearly everybody is on the block if you can get good value for him. I mean, if you got offered for Beal, if somebody offered you, just something absolutely phenomenal, you can't turn it down. Is Bowl a drop? He was playing great, but now he's mediocre. Could it be that Wendell is a better pair for him than Wagner? Yeah, I'm still holding Bowl for right now, but it's getting close to maybe drop season for him. I still think it's going to be very tough to find blocks and threes that he offers and field goal percentage, with the double-double upside and the multi-block upside that he offers on the waiver wire. So for now, he's a hold, but yeah, it's getting close. It's unfortunate. Another ESPN Points League, Trey and KPJ or Jimmy Buckets and Kuz. I think the Trey side wins in this one. You're swapping out Kuz for Tyler Hero, I think, based on what the first trade we had was. You said trade away Pirtle. No, I don't think you're going to get fair value for Pirtle right now. I think people are concerned that he gets traded. I think people are concerned with his ramp up after coming back from injury. So, no, I would say hold on to Jakob Pirtle unless somebody gives you fair value, but I doubt they will. Bogdanovich with the Pistons or Damian Lee. Bogdanovich by a mile. Is Warren a hold? If you can afford a hold for TJ Warren, sure. Can he take the starting spot from Royce? I don't think so. I don't think TJ Warren brings the defense and passing abilities that we see from Royce O'Neal. And I think obviously the Nets are more concerned with winning games and having the best fit on the court rather than how our fantasy teams are doing. So for me, I think Royce remains in that role. I think Warren is more of a kind of a microwave scorer for them. Off the bench or otherwise. So, yeah, for me, Royce is going to maintain that spot, I think. Would you keep Tyus Jones in Dynasty? Sure. It just depends on who's on your waiver wire and who you have to sacrifice to get him, but sure. All right, got time for maybe one more here. Salute. 3 of my guys are game time decisions. Beal with a hamstring, Bam with a head illness, or Hunter with an ankle. Which 2 I could actually play tonight? Man, I hate speculating on the injury stuff. I think Bam, just because head illness is much less severe, I think, than hamstring or ankle. So I would bet on him returning. Hard to say on Beal and Hunter. I'm sorry. I don't want to speculate on those. All right, and we'll go with one more here. What center would you target to trade away Plumlee or Zubac? They are tanking my free throw percentage. Yeah, they're definitely tanking your free throw percentage, I'm sure. But all other things equal, it's going to be Plumlee that's the trade. Zubac has the much higher upside with rebounds, with field goal percentage, with blocks, and even with points. So Plumlee would be the guy to trade away. All right, guys, we are going to go ahead and call it here. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. You can hit me up on Twitter at Zak the Monster. Send me a DM. Drop me a comment, whatever you guys want to do. I will get to the rest of your questions if I missed you today. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys back next week in the new year, 2023. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.